They claim they saved lives, but what they really did was make it impossible to prosecute a mass murderer like KSM. Because if what we did to him ever came out in a court of law, the case is over. The guy planned 9/11, and instead of going to jail for the rest of his life, the CIA turned him into a recruiting tool for a war we're still fighting.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, the former director of the CIA, took to Twitter recently to offer a negative review of a new Amazon film starring Adam Driver called The Report, which dramatizes the Herculean effort by a small group of staffers from the Senate Intelligence Committee to compile a definitive and comprehensive report on the CIA's torture program in the wake of the September 11th attacks. The staffers, led by a staffer for Senator Dianne Feinstein, a man named Daniel J. Jones, combed through more than 6.3 million internal CIA documents over 5 years to document in excruciating detail the various forms of torture used by the CIA, its effectiveness or, notably, lack thereof, and the ways in which the CIA consistently misled the public about the use of what it euphemistically called enhanced interrogation techniques. Despite obstruction and opposition from both the CIA and many Republicans, a detailed executive summary of the report was released back in 2014. The full report remains classified to this day. Secretary Pompeo took issue with the new film dramatizing all this, which includes disturbing scenes of torture perpetrated by the CIA. Pompeo writing, "I watched the report, fiction. To be clear, the bad guys are not our intelligence warriors. The bad guys are the terrorists." Almost immediately, a number of people disputed Pompeo's claim the film is, quote, fiction. The film's director, Scott Z. Burns, responded, quote, "I agree with Secretary Pompeo that terrorists are bad guys, as are the people who conducted barbaric and ineffective acts of torture in the name of Pompeo's misguided notion of patriotism and then misled Congress and the American people." I'm joined now by the man Adam Driver portrays in the film, the guy who led the team that investigated the CIA and compiled the report, Daniel J. Jones. Thank you for being with me. First, let me just get you to respond to Secretary Pompeo, since you were there for the real-life events and have sort of watched the film come about. What would you say to the Secretary of State?
Well, first of all, Chris, thank you so much for having me on. Largely, I think the Secretary's views are simplistic and uninformed. The Senate spent 7 years going through this program, 6.3 million pages of CIA records, as you said, came up with 20 findings and conclusions after those 7 years that can be boiled down into three things, basically. The CIA's enhanced interrogation techniques, the torture was ineffective. It led to detainees providing basically fabricated responses to get the CIA's torture to stop. Second, the CIA misled repeatedly over a number of years the Department of Justice, Congress, and in fact the White House. And then finally, a major conclusion was that the program was grossly mismanaged by the CIA. There was virtually no accountability for wrongdoing over the years the program was active.
Yeah, one of the most remarkable features of the report is the fact the CIA just sort of threw $80 million at two guys to kind of erect, they're from nothing, a kind of torture program. What did you find about that?
Well, what we found was when the CIA was given these authorities, and that was shortly after 9/11, on September 17th, 2001, President Bush signed a covert action memorandum that allowed the CIA to detain suspected terrorists. It said nothing about interrogation. Over a number of months, the CIA explored what it should do with the detention of terrorists. Where should it put them? Should they bring them to U.S. soil? Should they be held on ships? Should they be held on a foreign U.S. military base? And eventually what the CIA concluded up until March was that this was not a job for the CIA, and the CIA had zero expertise in detaining people, and they weren't even discussing interrogations formally yet. But when Abu Zubaydah, the first CIA detainee who was captured at the end of March, when he was captured in Pakistan, the CIA decided to take them into to custody, to CIA's custody, and not provide Abu Zubaydah to another country for interrogation. Now, initially, that interrogation was led by the FBI, and the FBI obtained a significant amount of information from Abu Zubaydah, the first CIA detainee, using rapport-building techniques. But that changed when these two contractors, CIA contractors at the agency at the time, went to the CIA and said, we have a program that we can use based off learned helplessness, which will allow detainees to provide secret information, specifically information on the next attack against the United States and operatives inside the United States. And this was basically built on an unfounded theory that was based on, again, learned helplessness. And this study was by Marty Seligman, who's at the University of Pennsylvania, and it was really about dogs.
So you've got these two people now running this operation, which does include torture. It ends up being as the character who plays Adam Driver plays you in the movie says, it essentially taints the prosecutions for some of the most significant mass murderers who are apprehended, but who have now existed in legal limbo because no case can be brought against them because the evidence was obtained through torture.
That's absolutely right. I mean, if you look at the trial for Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the mastermind of 9/11, that is not even supposed to start until next January. And all the deliberations thus far have been about the admissibility of evidence after these individuals have been tortured. And what we document, what the Senate documents in that 7,000-page report, 500 pages, which were released, is the repeated false information that these detainees provided just to get the torture to stop. So the argument at Guantanamo with their lawyers is, how can this information be admissible when many of our defendants in Guantanamo admitted to things they did not do simply to get torture to end?
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.